partner at Argia Green, and that has knowledge on digital diplomacy. He's worked at the OECD, and he's worked in Colombia, and he has his own consulting company nowadays. I was a very good friend of his dad and his mom. We studied together at university, so that we can see that we belong to different generations, and he's an example of this youth that is in the first line of digital development. We also have with us a practitioner, someone that implements things, Idoia Mateo, who is the head for IT security of the Santander Group. So they are in charge of cyber attacks, cyber wars. So in practice, they are a big institution. And then we have an expert on digital policy that works in the European Council for Foreign Relations, Georgios Verdi, and I follow everything he publishes. And I recommend you to also follow him, because he gives us a very good information of what is happening in the digital sphere. So now I'm going to first give the floor, even though we're 10 minutes delayed, to Ángel Melguizo, that will be speaking about a digital sustainable Europe, and then I will give the floor to Georgios and Idoia. First of all, good morning, and thank you for your resilience in this almost last session, in this very intense course on the Europe we have, the Europe we want, and how we can get there. Josep Borrell continues to say, I'm young. That's like my mom that says I'm a kid. But I'm not that young anymore. I'm accumulating some experience in my life now. But yes, it is true that I'm passionate about technology issues and digital issues, and it's a pleasure to be participating in QUO VADIS addressing this issue. And please allow me also to say, as I believe it's the last QUO VADIS of you as High Representative, I would like to acknowledge the work you've done for us, for Europeans in the world, and citizens from Madrid in the world. It's wonderful for you to have been in this position and everything you've done. So I need to really acknowledge your work. So thank you for facing challenges, some geopolitical and digital challenges, geopolitical challenges that we didn't think we would have to face. But I always said wonderfully to have Josep Borrell where he is. And listening to what's been happening in the QUO VADIS course that was born in the year 2000-2001, I thought that the best way of showing the tectonic change in the digital world was to reflect on the companies that existed in the year 2001 when this course first happened, and which ones didn't. And in 2001, we didn't have Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, Zoom, nor TikTok. So the way in which we get our news, we communicate, and are entertained has fully changed. We didn't have a Dropbox. How did we work? We didn't have Tesla, Airbnb, nor Uber. How we move in cities and how we do things has fully changed. We had Amazon, Twitter, and Google, but we didn't have YouTube. So this could not be broadcasted as we're doing now. We didn't have Google Maps. We had to use other tools then. And we had Apple and Microsoft, but we didn't have iPhones then. So the way in which we work, study, move, use transport, pay, and live has changed. And therefore, the Europe that we want has also changed. I don't know if we can maybe see the slides on the screen. I don't see this. Okay, thank you. It's a Europe that needs to change, because these trends that I've just mentioned are going to accelerate even more, because half of the world doesn't have 4G, 2/3 of the world don't have 5G, but we're already speaking about 6G. When? Still, many citizens are disconnected from their institutions. AI is being used in all public services. And when there's mobility problems, there's a boom of electric vehicles that are connected. So this reality is going to move faster and faster, a reality that is very much linked to wars. We cannot understand war without technology, and geopolitics cannot be understood without technology and the other way around. So this is happening in Europe, and we are confronting China with a very clear initiative that is not using old-fashioned infrastructures. They are mainly based on green and renewable transition and technology, and the U.S. that is also putting in place very ambitious geopolitical implementations. And let me insist on another issue too. These are two countries that always, in a sustainable manner, their governments and institutions have always been addressing these issues, not only through these programs that are extraordinary and that they're implementing because their departments of state and their ministries have seen this as part of the agenda, which hasn't always been so in Europe. Therefore, you will hear me talk about many issues that are linked to what you've been listening to in the previous year regarding the competitiveness and the competition between China and US. And this will be linked to the existence of some European champions in some digital sectors that can really face these challenges. And of course, we will be speaking about the green and energy transition, because technology cannot be understood without energy. And I hope that you have an optimistic takeaway after my presentation. I would like to say, instead of Europe in the face of the digital revolution, how can Europe co-lead the digital revolution? We should be ambitious, and I believe we can be so with this business digitalized sector that I'm going to describe. It's a great responsibility to have this discussion together with the High Representative, but fortunately, I think we will have three speakers today that at least them two who are experts. So everything we say about technology, we will be sure we're saying the right thing. The Chief Information Security Office of Santander. This is also linked to security and what secure offline has to be secure online. Also an advisor to Telefonica on security, and she will be focusing on cybersecurity, which is one of the key dimensions. And then Giorgio Zaberdi, who is a fellow of the CFR, that is based in Brussels and know what is happening. And that I would say that he's a technological humanist, or this relationship between technology and human rights and human beings is something that we also need to bear in mind. And now, in the next 10 minutes, and before giving them the floor, I will talk about the Europe that could co-lead the digital revolution, and I will speak about from three viewpoints. First of all, as a pro-European, I've lived throughout the world. I feel European, and not everything that Europe does I like, but this is one of my biases because I'm pro-European, and you should know that. I'm also an economist, and therefore I will be speaking about some of the business initiatives that I believe are necessary for this Europe to co-lead the digital revolution. And finally, as an applied analyst, I always use graphs and figures, and you will see some of these graphs and figures throughout my presentation and this session. So where is the fight, the competition? According to Gartner, one of the technological consultants see firms that is most important. We are going to get to 6G. There are new things in cybersecurity. What is the another more G? What does it mean? It means that telecommunications services start to do things that have even a higher level from 3G to 4G was the leap in which we started to use all the mobile devices and telecommunication devices in a more interactive manner, not just receiving or sending information, but directly some apps started to be in place, and the mobility apps, for example, needed 4G, but from 4G to 5G, there was a change in the use of technologies and industrial activities. And this allows us to detect when a machine is going to fail before it fails, and to fix it beforehand, which allows us to optimize public services. 6G will be the next generation. Every 3, 4, 5 years, there is a redefinition of these generations, which means living in a world that is fully digitized. In 6G, we won't have an online or offline line. Everything will be online at the same time and offline at the same time. So this is the place where we have China, the US, and Europe, but not other regions with lower incomes. But this is a reality. This is already a reality, and there is an enormous competition between China and the US. And China clearly has taken the leadership in 5G, in batteries, solar panels, electric vehicles. The US is a power that is leading everything that has to do with platforms, biopharma, computation. And in the middle of these two geopolitical and economic giants, there is a fight in AI, new network grid generations, and semiconductors. And this fight is not only about technology. There's a lot of technology, and I respect computer scientists, but this is also linked to data. And when we talk about some of these technologies, they are generating data, and what do we do with this data? Autonomous vehicles are computers that go through the streets of our cities and are able to collect not only our information as users, but also the environment information, infrastructures, roads. Imagine what you can do when you have millions of vehicles going through the streets and roads of our cities each and every day, and you have the capacity of computation, that is, of understanding and translating that information into knowledge. And that is the battle and the competition, a competition for data and information, and a competition being a bit provoking in which Europe is still not there. Europe is leading the part of governance with regulations, institutions, and that's okay. And I will say that this is an asset for Europe, but we would want for the Europe bubble to move upwards and be part of the sectors which are strategic. What is the comparison between Europe, China, and Latin America, to give you some figures? Well, I'm going to show you visually. Internet platforms, all technology companies that supply technology or that allow us to purchase through the internet. If we compare the Europeans with the Asian and the US, we see that Europe is between 10 and 20 times smaller in this sector than the sector in the US. There's no company in Europe that is amongst the 15 biggest. Number 17 is Spotify, which is our champion. There's none of the 15 biggest in technology. The 16th is SAP, and we only have one in the top 10, which is ASML, with chips partly because it's linked to chips in America. We might think that in these figures there is a creation of a bubble. But what happens when we look at the export of digital services, everything that can be purchased through the internet or everything that is facilitated? Well, the Toulouse University estimated what was the volume of digital exports per region. And here in the purple area, Europe confronted to China or US continues to be this in magnitudes between 10 and 20 times smaller regarding this sector. In this dynamic, there's an element that might seem a bit hard for this course, but that is the development of chips and semiconductors. 3 of every 11 companies, amongst the biggest 11 companies in the company, 3 manufacture chips, only chips, nothing else. NVIDIA, which is the chip leader in the world, has a capitalization as Apple or Google. It's like 5 times GP Morgan. NVIDIA chip manufacturer is like a T-Mobile, that 15 times like T-Mobiles, or 100 times like Delta, that is the one of the biggest companies in its sector. But it's not only a company dominating the sector. If we look at the chip sector and we compare the 50 main companies manufacturing chips with the 50 main technology and internet, energy, finance, pharma, and telecommunications companies, we see that the chip sector is 20 times bigger than the whole energy sector in the world. Manufacturing chips, you're 20 times bigger than the production of oil and gas in the world. You're 40 times bigger than banking. I'm sorry, Doya, for that. And today it's much more profitable to manufacture chips, 3 times bigger than telecommunications. And this is the comparison between them and Europe. If we get the biggest in pharma, like Nova, or we take a Ferrari in the automotive sector or others, we see that there is a magnitude that is much smaller. So NVIDIA is like 10 times Nestle, 40 times, I was going to say Santander, but I'm going to say BNP Paribas, as there are many French here. It's like 40 times the BNP Paribas, or 120 times bigger than Ericsson, which is a supplier of 5G. And this is relevant not only because of the market dynamics, but also because behind this, there's also productivity. And according to the MIT analysis, productivity boosted by AI can be accelerated between a 25 to a 50%. And to give you a dimension, according to the McKinsey Institute, AI generalized in America, that is to be able to include all this capacity to anticipate mistakes and optimize processes in our companies and in our lives, can generate an economic impact that is like the economy of Greece each and every year. So that's what we could make if this image changes and we're able to grow in Europe. Therefore, let's do it. And to do it, we need a clear diagnosis of why we are where we are. And the first reaction is we are where we are because Europe has only focused on regulating. And this is partly right. It is true that regulation, not only of the digital sector, but in general, is behind us not having these champions in Europe. First of all, because we don't have a digital market, a digital integrated market that is as big as the Chinese or US. In the European integration, telecommunications together with energy and finance was considered to be one of the markets that initially wasn't going to be integrated. And this fragmentation of markets explains why Europe is not where it should be. And secondly, financing. On many occasions, and I've worked for 10 years in a bank, so I really value this sector, but as soon as there's an innovation or risk project, you have to go to the US, to the risk capital sector in California, because that's where they speak the language of risk and not a traditional European bank that wouldn't provide this funding to you. So the absence of this kind of market is another problem. Talent, Chinese and US talent, because they've appealed and they've attracted the best talent to their homes, which is another factor that differentiates Europe from these giants. And culture. The culture that I've just mentioned that promotes risk. So what can we do about this? First of all, to reflect on how we have an advantage or a foundation that is bigger than what we think. It is true that Europe has no champions in the 15 main technology companies. But Europe has champions in the other sectors. Europe has champions, for example, 5 of the 10 leaders in the automotive sector are European. 4 of 10 leaders in food are European in the world. In the pharma sector, 5 of 10 leader companies are European. In energy, 2 of 10, and then position 3 and 14. So in this group, Europe always have 5 leading companies. And this difference between the red bar and the other bars are just resources that are now being going to implementation of technology, but we have to go on to the use of technology, which is what really has an impact on our lives. So Europe has 4 leaders in all the sectors that are significant for us, and this is an element for the Europe that we want and that co-leads the digital revolution. Together with this, there's also mobilization of public resources and the existence of public programs to promote digital implementation. And a third element would be to give value to all the network that Europe has, Europe as an institution, as well as the European countries in each of its capitals. We have delegations, we have embassies, we have commercial offices, financial offices, and that's what China and US mobilize in a very active manner to help in the industrial and economic development. And this is what Europe could mobilize in the future. And to conclude, if we know what we can do, how can we implement it? Well, following what the Olympians said, very fast and in a strong manner. Fast because the strategies of our competitors, China and US, are very clear, and they have a very clear idea of what their target is. In 2018-19, China implemented its new infrastructure program. So this Belt and Road Initiative was going to create infrastructures in the world, and it was reformed into a massive investment program of the ABCs, which are artificial intelligence, blockchain, cloud computing, big data, new energy, and manufacturers, 5G, ultra-high voltage transmission lines, and industrial internet. So China is doing this, and China has invested $11 billion only in Latin America in lithium production. And they do so while they invest $4 billion in battery production and electric vehicle production also in Latin America. There are American plants in Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Brazil providing jobs to 13,000 people. So that already exists. Imagine if these vehicles that are going to be giving us lots of data are combined with the computation capacity and analysis capacity that China is establishing also in other regions. So once again, only by looking at Latin America, China today in technology is not going to be supplying the cheapest devices, but they are the ones creating computation plants and renewable energy plants in almost the whole region. So we need to be much faster. This is moving really fast, and we need to move much faster. Europe has to think big about its programs. I'm not going to be too critical with Global Gateway because it's still halfway through its path, but a Global Gateway, the initiative in which Europe is repositioning itself in geopolitical terms in the world, announced investments and support for 300 billion euros that yearly is investing in the world the GDP of Uruguay or Serbia. We believe that Europe and its geopolitical position can change just by mobilizing these resources. And let me give you an example for Latin America. Global Gateway, this digital alliance started with Latin America with an investment of 45 billion euros. If they materialize this 45 million euros, if they invest in physical infrastructures and new infrastructures, and we train all the workers that have to be trained, and there is no loss of resources, Latin America would grow at 0.09% more per year. That is not enough. No one's going to be aware. So what do you think Latin Americans will be more aware of? The 13,000 jobs coming from the Chinese electric vehicle plants of the 0.09% of the GDP. This is an economic exercise in which we compare the growth of Latin America foreseen in the world. It's a growth in which the region will continue investing in infrastructures, roads, technologies, ideas, universities. It will continue to use all those resources in a better way by innovating, and there will be more people employed. The factors for the growth is that there's more capital and more employment, and what we foresee is for Latin America to grow between 2 and 3% in the next years. If we add to this an investment coming from Europe with the help in physical infrastructures, the underground in Bogota, highways in Central America, if we add skilling and education programs for the future of these jobs, and we improve the connectivity, what would be the growth of Latin America compared to what had been foreseen initially? Only almost 1 point or 0.09%. So this is a good starting point, but we need more than this.
The first graph, we start on the right. The first graph, 2.25% is the growth of the economy in Latin America in the for next year. The growth depends upon the capital and more roads, more machines, and so a part of this 2.5 is the investment in roads, and also if you are going to invest in technology, more R&D, and if you are going to have more jobs created in Latin America, there is for the time being lower participation of women, and also a lot of young people are getting onto the market, and also because there are many other manufacturing modes, and these are the forecasts of the International Monetary Fund, and this is an optimistic scenario. On the basis of this scenario, if we are applying the global gateway in an optimistic way, we would have 1/10 of the growth. And the message is it's not enough. So we have used a growth model, and we are going to add up what Europe is going to invest in the region on each one of these pillars: roads, airports, connectivity, training, and education of human resources. What we need is to have an entrepreneurial sector that is going to be a complement. We have to be stronger, faster, but that's where Europe is having had a new advantages, and you have said those different sectors, pharma, mobility, food, all are global world leaders. These sectors are in Europe leveraging our sustainability environmental agenda. They are being very transparent about their energy use. And currently, if there is a position where we cannot really intervene, is how can we provide the energy in the safest way? Because we are all using our smartphones, and it has an impact, but it is not that much. What do the big companies to cool their centers, their computing centers? The amount of energy needed is enormous. And also Microsoft and Google are consuming as much energy as islands The forecast is that these energy needs are going to be doubling in the future. It can be an opportunity because the European companies are on the sustainability track, and so we can be strong and we can feel we can be proud of it. And to close, I would say that we have to develop this digital economy in a sustainable and responsible way. And the life of the future generation depends upon that. And I think Europe can be a major actor in this technological revolution. Thank you.
Gracias, Ángel. La verdad es que me ha encantado.
I have loved your vision about this, the game about the companies. We are going to talk about cyber. Why cyber? Because I've been working in cybersecurity. Before I was working in cybersecurity, I was working in technology, and I see that there's a rapidly changing. And to be at the head of the cyber department it didn't exist. The cyber crime didn't exist in the past. So now we are facing a new scenario. That's what I want to talk about. This transformation underway, not only to be leaders in technology, but all the companies, the major companies in all the sectors, we use technology. Society use technology. Citizens, we use the technology in our everyday life. Cyber security is important. Why are we talking about cyber security? We use this slide when we invite guests that are not really technological because the world is digital. It has been said. And the adoption of new technology is fast. The chat GPT, the OpenAI, is reached when you reach 1 million of users, and we achieve this amount in 5 days. The technologies, as Netflix, we talk about months and years, and now the adoption of new technology are speedily achieved, and the technologies are something that belongs to the first world. I had the opportunity to go to Africa with the Santander Foundation and on the campaign Best for Africa for women entrepreneurs and the use of technology in Africa. You are in the midst of Senegal, where the children are barefoot, but the window to the world is a smartphone. So smartphones and technology not only have companies, but also have societies as Latin America and Africa. It is a window open to education, training, and the AI are going to improve training, upskilling, reskilling, and more online training, and the AI also is going to be a major tool. This is my first reflection. And although world population is huge, more than 60% of the population is connected to internet, our households. Why are we producing so many chips? Because everything has a chip. Fridges, cars, not only high technology, but everything is connected to internet. And the traffic in internet, more than 70%, 67% of the internet traffic is originated via smartphones. So that's why as companies or countries as Brazil, Chile, or Argentina have their transaction windows in order to have e-commerce, and using businesses on internet is their smartphone, and this is important. And we have a great amount of devices connected to internet. You can see the statistic on the left. What happens every minute in internet? The World Economic Forum said what would happen with a digital blackout. There are going to be economic losses, and we are foreseeing the fact of losing lives even. When we started talking about cybercrime in 2017 in the WannaCry affair, it was the first virus. It was a ransomware that started in Asia and was in nearly all the computing systems of the biggest companies, public, private companies, and the computers were attacking these computers with the ransomware. There were hospitals that had to stop, and critical facilities came to a still, and cybercrime and cybersecurity became a systemic risk, and that's what I want to talk about in the few next minutes. Cyber attack have augmented worldwide, and Angel has pointed out at the figures and the cybercrime is the problem of 1.5 trillions of dollars because it is creating huge profits, more than the five largest corporation of the world, of course. How can we get to calculate the profit? Because the great corporation or Europol, in FIDE, we have a cybercrime institute. We have connections with Latin America, and we know what is the cost of to be a cyber criminal. Cybercrime has become one of the largest business return on investment because you do not need logistics, because the traditional businesses were before cybercrime were drug trafficking, but now it is done through internet, and the cybercrime uses the digital world, and this digital world is very cheap. So if I am a cyber criminal, I can have computers in another country, and jumping from one computer to the other, I can buy a virus as a service and or a distribution list of mails to have phishing and send the emails and trying to get the banking details of the customers. The profit is huge. These are data that are provided by the Economic World Forum. The companies are starting, it is quite recent, to estimate the losses associated to the cybercrime. When a company is attacked, there is a loss of activity, there is an economic impact. They have to have experts and lawyers and communication advisors, and it depends on the country or the regulations. They have to be in touch with the customers. All these money is the loss, that is the cost of the cybercrime for the corporations. The cost of cybercrime is about 1.8 trillions of dollars, as you can see on the slide, and in 2027 is going to be more than the GDP of countries of Germany and other states. So this is going to be the cost, a huge cost for corporations. On the right, we have the profit for the cyber criminal. We have got real cases. Attack of a bank in Mexico. They robbed $100 million in 1 hour in a simultaneous attack to 1,000 cash points throughout the country, and 1,000 individuals went to the cash points, to these 1,000 cities in Mexico with 1,000 cash points, and through these computer virus, it always done on a Friday with all the cash points full of money. The cash point is going to print the amounts retrieved, and this was a company, a corporation. Later on, we collaborate with the police forces in Mexico, and this was a company that have departments call themselves specialized in banking, in energy, and they had a building in Mexico capital with offices. And we know that because this was a very profitable company. It's a bit harsh to say that, but this is the reality in the world. The world is digital, and as Hannah has said, the scenery has changed, but this entails a certain number of associated risks that are for everybody, not only for the large companies. We cannot distinguish between the small companies and the bigger companies. Technology, and with technology, money is not only paper or coins. Now it is a matter of data. What they want to rob money to the banks, but to other companies they want to rob them data, and matters of energy they want to rob projects. And a question? No. Okay. And this is very important because we are all vulnerable, because data is gold today. So that's why we can be attacked. What can we do? What are our major threats when talking about geopolitics? And we are saying that together with this physical war in Ukraine, there is a cyber war. Apart from this army invading Ukraine, all the services and critical services of countries that are on the border of Russia are being constantly attacked with cyber attacks. There are many different cyber attacks, but when we look at the different players that are attacking, for not only the cyber criminals, those are robbing money and data, but we also have the nation states that are investing in technologies, as China is, but they're also investing in cyber attacks. The companies, Europol, and all the major organizations are trying to understand what are the kinds of the new cyber attacks to see if we are susceptible to be attacked or if the attack could be successful. And a nice thing about working in cyber security is that it is not a competitive advantage. If I am attacked or they attack my neighbors, I have to share how it has been done, because if this happens to my neighbor, I can be the target next time. So it is very important because it is one of the sole area when we share information. We share about the attack and what have been what is the target in order to avoid this attack. And we are critical infrastructures for the country, and we have to see whether we can be subject to those kind of attacks. And also I wanted to talk about ENISA, which is the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity that carries out surveys to see what are the emerging threats. They do that yearly, and I always like to talk about the future. one of the another threats is that we are working more and more in the cloud. We are having external cybersecurity services, and beforehand we had our information in the data centers, but now more and more we are externalizing those services, and we have major players in the market, and the European regulators are having doubts about these great players, because we have Microsoft, and if we all go to the same providers, if they are attacked, we are going to be facing huge concerns. And so therefore, this is a part of this supply chain that is external. And there is another risk. It is the AI that is going to be addressed by our colleague. And you have been talking about talent in technology, and for the 2026, more than 1,000 specialists should be working here in Spain, but we haven't got that. We have to bet on upskilling, of those these staff. We have to work hard on adapting ourselves to these new threats. And to close my talk, I wanted to talk about the report of the World Economic Forum. Emilio Botín was attended to this meeting and in 2008, and he said this computing safety is not going to be the next black swan. He talked about the 10 emerging risks. Each year they carry out a survey on the systemic risks that can emerge in the next 10-year period. There are many risks, and we can talk about social risk, and they talked about the technological risks. Last year, you can see on the left side, we can see the technological risks that are in velvet, and we can have the cyber insecurity of society. This is a general widespread risk, but this year we haven't got only one risk, we have two, because apart from the cyber insecurity, in 2 years we also have another risk, which is misinformation and disinformation, the manipulation through AI of the technologies to have misinformation or disinformation campaigns that have an impact on politics, but also on the cybercrime. There could be frauds related to identity, and the campaign attacks on citizens and companies are much easier, and also there is an abuse of the technology of AI and technology. Is something that is there, that has been identified by the World Economic Forum. Of course, I work in this field, but this is a reality. I don't want to trigger the alarm, but it is what it is. So I think that is all. I just wanted to say wanted to put on the table the last message. What we are doing as companies, we have a social mission. We have to educate companies. The World Economic Forum has created a cybersecurity center where the biggest European companies meet together, gather, and they launch messages to try to have a society that should be more cyber resilient. What does that mean? In this kind of scenario, we know that everyone can be subject to a cyber attack, So if it happens and we are attacked, we should be able to carry on our activity with minor impact and with a greater flexibility. So we have new norms, regulations, and we have to talk about also the operational resilience. So in the face of any attack, how can I protect myself? How can I keep on working and providing banking services using internet? So to close, I like to say that the cybersecurity is not a matter only of securing the critical infrastructure. Cybersecurity is an issue that belongs to society. So I would like to help the world to be safer, and that's what we want to keep on working and collaborating. That's all. Thank you.
I asked before what the G's meant. The word cyber, what does it mean?
Al final es Internet, es la forma.
It's what we call the internet and everything that is digital, the cyberspace. Cyber comes from cyberspace. But the definition cannot include the same term. It's the use of all the digital channels.
Los canales digitales para acceder.
You are using the different channels to access your systems. So it's internet at the end of the day. Well, I've worked in IT security, and now it's called cybersecurity because we are not securing the system, the PC, but we're trying. And where does cyber come from? I don't know. And I'm really sorry, but whoever is speaking is not using a mic, and we don't hear what they're saying. Yes. I'm sorry I cannot answer your question, but I will look into that. And we're really sorry that you're not using a mic.
Ciberespacio, claro. Si al final yo creo que ha sido la evolución de lo que es sistemas tecnológicos.
Yes, it's the evolution of the technology systems in this digital area has all become cyber. Georgios is Greek, so he can explain the source or the origin of any term.
For these very interesting presentations. And I want to kickstart my presentation by a refresher because I also spoke here on Tuesday, and on Tuesday we spoke a lot about technological competitiveness and why Europe is behind when it comes to technological competitiveness. So I want to connect it to that and also reinforce a bit what Angel has been saying. So if we can have, please, the slides on the screen. Thank you very much. So here you can see what I was talking about on Tuesday and that Angel showed us with his other visuals as well. This is a comparison of, on the left of the blue line is the 7 biggest US tech firms and their market capitalization, their market valuation. And then on the right, it's the 7 top European technology firms and their market valuation. And the difference is huge. US companies the 7 top US tech companies are valued at about $12 trillion. And these numbers are actually, I think, 6 months old. Right now, it must be up something around $14 trillion, whereas the 7 largest European tech firms are valued at just $700 billion. So that's a 20 times difference. And in this next slide, you can see also the differences within the companies themselves. And something that I think is very indicative here is, and sorry, but I keep hearing myself double, if we can fix that, thank you. Something you can see here that I found very interesting is you can see ASML, which is the biggest technological champion of Europe, is almost 5 times smaller than NVIDIA Corporation. And again, NVIDIA's market capitalization has skyrocketed in the last 6 months when this graphic is from. But today I want to also go a bit into another topic, into artificial intelligence. And this next slide, I think, is very indicative of our position in this specific piece of technology that is very strategic, and we're going to talk about it a bit more later. But here you can see private investments in last year when it comes to artificial intelligence in the United States, in the European Union and the United Kingdom, and in China. So this comes from Stanford, so unfortunately the researchers in Stanford wanted to group together the European Union and the United Kingdom. In this graph, the United Kingdom alone accounts for about 3.78 billions of private investments in AI. So actually, Europe is below China if we take the European Union on its own. So this shows the difference when it comes to private investment, and something else that we were talking on Tuesday, that in Europe, the entrepreneurs are cash-starved. They lack the access to finance, which is so important in order to build these operations. And then the final slide that I want to talk to you about before heading on with my talk is, again, related to artificial intelligence, the number of newly funded companies in 2023. And you can see how far away the United States is from the European Union and the United Kingdom. Here, the United Kingdom accounts for about 104 newly funded companies. So if we subtract that, at least we are above from China when it comes to that. And there is definitely a sort of positive trend in the European Union, but it's very important, of course, to accelerate it. So this is a lot what I was talking about on Tuesday. Now, today I think it's very useful that we delve more deeply about what's at stake in the digital revolution and the AI revolution. Why is it so important? What are the opportunities and the risks for citizens, for us Europeans, and how these are reflected in the geopolitical arena? Now, before that, I actually want to ask the audience a question. Can I ask you, how many of you have ever tried, tested, played with ChatGPT? Can you show your hands? That's a quite big, for those online, I would say a big majority, I'd say 60 to 70% of the room raised their hands. Can I ask you actually how many of you are using it on a regular basis for professional or academic tasks? Quite a big, I'd say about 40% of the room as well is using it regularly. So of course, ChatGPT is one of the most successful examples of generative AI. It was released in November 2022, and it immediately captured public imagination. It became the fastest growing consumer application in history. It got 100 million users in just the second month. And I think the fascination of ChatGPT and the reason why so many of us is using it is because it provides efficiency and effectiveness. It helps us take the drudgery out of routine tasks that we don't want to really be doing, makes things easier and gives us more free time. And of course, besides the personal level, this spills over to businesses as well. So many businesses today are using AI applications in order to build new products, to improve their services, to have customer service experiences that are very individualized and very personalized. And there is a very interesting study from the McKinsey Consulting that they surveyed about 900 organizations that had implemented AI, and they asked them about the impact of this implementation. And about 42% of them reported that by implementing AI, they managed to reduce costs. And 59% of them reported that by implementing AI, they managed to increase revenues. So we can see what the impact of these technologies and why these graphs are so strategic when it comes to efficiency and economic competitiveness and productivity. Now, secondly, and besides economic productivity and efficiency, AI brings a lot of socioeconomic opportunities as well. And I would argue that the most promising applications that these technologies bring are in fields like in health, in education. So for example, medical doctors are already using AI in order to be able to analyze medical images to spot things like lung cancer and breast cancer and melanoma. And that, of course, is very beneficial to patients as it helps with more quicker diagnostics, and it leads eventually to more lives saved. Now, finally, something that we cannot ignore, even though it can have ethical gray lines, but it is very important when we're talking about it, AI is also transforming the military. And this is a reality that we cannot ignore. And this starts from very mundane things within the military, such as reducing the maintenance cost of equipment and weapon systems, managing personnel. But it also extends, of course, to the battlefield. And we have reports from the New York Times, even last month, about how AI-fueled drones are being used in the war and in Ukraine. So we see all these benefits of this technology that they extend when it comes to competitiveness, when it comes to productivity. Angel talked a lot about how AI is also expected to grow the European economy, when it comes to national security, when it comes to well-being. So, of course, many countries around the world see this technology and they see in this a foundational piece of technology that can help them gain many, many advantages. And this has prompted what has been called the global AI race, which is essentially a race for countries, for states, for great powers, for middle powers to gain an advantage in artificial intelligence, whether that is an advantage in developing the technology, in controlling it, or in regulating it. And this has taken very much a central part when it comes to the US-China strategic competition. So Xi Jinping himself has stated that, and I quote, technological innovation has become the main battleground. And in 2017, China put forward a proposal called the Next Generation AI Development Plan to make China a leader in AI technologies by 2030 and surpass the United States. And of course, the United States is also mirroring this approach in the global AI race. Their strategic objective is to stay as far ahead as possible from China and limit their access to semiconductors as well. So that's why we had in 2022, President Biden introduces the Chips and Science Act, and we also see export restrictions under the small yards, high fence approach, which aims to restrict access to semiconductors that are used to train artificial intelligence systems. So the question now becomes, where is Europe in all of this, right? So what is Europe's position in the AI revolution and the digital revolution, and of course in this global race to control technology? And Europe, as Angel already told us, and I covered a bit on Tuesday, has chosen a third way, has chosen the way of regulation, and has chosen to pursue a path of becoming a regulatory empire. Now, while we have talked about this, we haven't covered why this is very important. And it is because while these technologies bring all these fantastic benefits for our health, for our societies, for our productivity, they also bring a lot of risks as well to our human societies, to our human rights. And I want to give a couple of examples to make these risks very tangible and understand what I mean by those. So the first example I want to mention, it comes from 2014, when the company Amazon decided to build an automated algorithm to automate their hiring processes. So basically the job of the algorithm was to review the resumes of applicants and choose who would come on board and work for the company. Now, this program was discontinued just a year later because the engineers realized one thing, that it started heavily discriminating against women. And that happened because Amazon's pool of employees was predominantly male, so the algorithm carried in the bias that were embedded in the data set and became discriminatory. So that's one example. A second example that has defined very much the discussion around AI comes from the Netherlands, when in 2019 the Dutch government was embroiled in a scandal because the Dutch tax authorities developed an automated algorithm in order to spot fraud among people applying for childcare benefits. So who from these people that were applying for childcare benefits didn't really deserve them because they weren't fulfilling the criteria, they were lying about it, etc. And this algorithm that they created also embedded institutional biases, because the risk factors that went into the algorithm included things such as when a citizen had a dual nationality, he would be more suspect of committing fraud. When a citizen was of low income, he would be more suspect of committing fraud. And this had real life effects, as about 20,000 parents were then accused of having defrauded the Dutch state without any proof besides what the algorithmic decision-making had given them, and were asked to pay back all this money. So in light of all these risks, and Idoia spoke a lot about other risks as well, and we have, of course, the risk to cybersecurity, the risk to disinformation of how, for example, we can now use generative AI tools to produce pictures of world leaders doing anything we can imagine. Just let your imagination run wild. So, of course, because of these risks, the EU decided to try to mitigate them in order to harness all the opportunities that we're talking about. And I got the clicker. And this is actually the structure behind the EU's Artificial Intelligence Act, which is very much an innovation that the European Union should be proud of, because it is the world's first law that regulates artificial intelligence systems. And it is worth taking a little look at this as well, because we have talked a lot about regulations, but we haven't seen what regulations entail and what they mean for entrepreneurs. So the way the regulation works is through this pyramid of risks, and each use case of artificial intelligence is regulated accordingly. So, for example, you have up there on the red corner what is called prohibited risk. And if your AI system falls into that category, you cannot bring it to the European Union. We think it brings too much of a risk. And here we have things such as manipulative AI, social credit systems, such as the one that have been allegedly used in China, AI that exploits the vulnerabilities of young people, of older people, and all that. And we believe that those systems should not be introduced into the single market. Now, below that, you have the orange category, which is the high risk, and this is what most of the regulation is about. Now, here, you can develop these systems, you can put them in the market, but you have to be very careful. You have to fulfill a certain criteria, certain obligations, certain a minimum standard to make sure that it is safe, and that these examples that I described of biases and discrimination do not replicate themselves. So here you have AI systems that are used in HR management, remember in the Amazon example, in government services, such as in the Netherlands, in education, in medical devices. So we want to make sure that we harness all the opportunities and we don't only get all the risks. And then finally, you have some other categories as well, and it's very interesting as well, the transparency requirements when it comes to deep fakes, and when you're talking to an AI chatbot, that the company is obligated to tell you that you are interacting with an artificial intelligence. And so, okay, so this is how the European Union is regulating its internal market. Now, the question becomes, where does this put us when it comes to the global race? What does this mean for a global standing in technologies? Well, the EU has had in the past the ability and has had some relative success in regulating globally, in imposing its regulatory approach on the world and achieving global influence through a phenomenon that is called the Brussels effect. And how does this Brussels effect happen? Well, it starts with the fact that the European single market is a market of 450 million relatively affluent individuals, and every global tech corporation that wants to build up its revenues will have to sell their products here. And so when they come into the single market, they have to comply with EU rules. They have to comply with this pyramid of risks when it comes to AI specifically. Now, the interesting part happens when these regulations go globally, because for a lot of these companies, it's much cheaper to have one standard across all their operations, to introduce one regulation across all their operations, rather than have a fragmented approach. And that's how a lot of EU regulations can go global very quickly. And the second level to this effect happens when countries copy the EU's approach, because which is very much connected to this, because it becomes less politically costly for them to adopt this regulation, since so many companies in the jurisdictions have done so. Okay, so we have seen how the EU has regulated the internal market, and how in previous years we have seen a Brussels effect materializing. Now the question becomes, will we have a Brussels effect in AI? We are behind when it comes to technological innovation. Will we manage to achieve influence when it comes to at least regulating the technology? And while it is very early to tell as well, we will have to at least wait for 2 or 5 years to have a safe picture, there are some hints that are telling us that probably we will not have the same kind of effect that we're hoping globally. And there are many factors to that. The first one is that this comes with a very high cost for entrepreneurs. I talked about this on Tuesday. If you're falling into the orange category, if your AI systems that you want to develop are in education or in health, you have to pay a hefty price. You have to pay about 100,000 to 300,000 euros just for the first year in order to be compliant, and that can drive a lot of innovation away. So when other jurisdictions see these compliance costs, they may want to opt for a different approach that is more innovation friendly. And that is very much connected with the fact that we are now living in an era where technology has been heavily geopoliticized, which wasn't the reality, I would argue, 8 or more years ago when the GDPR was going global. So this is the situation we are having right now. So what I basically try to argue here is that we are in the risk of falling behind when it comes to technological innovation, but also in our global influence in at least trying to regulate global technologies where we had some success in the past. We may not have this success anymore in the next years. So the question becomes again, what can we do about it? And some of the recommendations that Angel went over and I went over on Tuesday are very critical in order to develop technological innovation. So we talked about access to skills, we talked about access to finance, we talked about making this regulation work for everyone. And this goes head in hand with the EU's global influence. Because if we go back and we see these numbers, and we have the AI Act for 3 or 5 years, and the European Union starts going up and up and up and showing more signs of success, then we will be more able to convince the rest of the world that our approach can be the true balance between regulation and innovation. However, if in the next 5 years our numbers are going all the more down, then the rest of the world will say, no, thank you, I will follow my own approach. And so this is very important. Now, the second thing that I also think must become a reality is we also need to focus on AI opportunities and not on AI risks. Because with this regulation, and again, we should be very proud of this regulation, but we took too much of a focus when it came to AI risks, and I think we ignored AI opportunities and how we can harness them in the European Union. Now, in the UK, there was a very interesting decision. The new government actually has commissioned a plan, an action plan for AI opportunities, which will be published in September, and which will set out policy recommendations for the new government, and is also establishing an AI opportunities unit within the civil service. So that is something that we must also consider, and things that this action plan must deal with is things such as how we can build a competitive AI industry, how we can also diffuse these AI technologies into traditional industries so that they become more competitive and they keep up with their US competitors. And then finally, and I will close with this so we can have some time for a conversation, I think it's very important that also the EU speaks the language of power when it comes to digital technologies. So we are speaking very well the language of the ethos of the markets and the ethos of the regulation, but we are not seeing technology as the US and China do, which is a lens of technology as a means to meet their strategic objectives. So I will close with that, and thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias. Y ahora si les parece...
Thank you so much. And now we will have one comment between us, and then we will open the floor to you all. I cannot resist asking the both of you a question. First of all, I love to ride my bike, and they say that there's 2 types of cyclists in the world, only 2, those that have fallen down and those that will fall down in the future. In cybersecurity, I believe that there's 2 types of citizens in the world, those that has fallen or will fall in the future. Therefore, we need to be resilient. After falling, you need to stand up, first of all, to see what's the condition of the bike after the fall, and then to continue. But my question is for my both colleagues. Up to what point is it realistic to believe that there is a Europe that is really going to lead the technology and digital offer, both in cybersecurity as in AI. And as European, do we really have to wait for the technology wave to go beyond the offer, because now it's in the chips, platforms, and so on and so forth, and to be more present in the different sectors? How do you see things? Well, it is complex. I love to be very sincere. Right now, European technology leaders in cybersecurity, they are very few, but we do believe there's lots of talent in cyber. I belong to an organization called Women for Cyber Spain that is part of the European Cybersecurity Organization, which is an organization created by the EU in 2016 to 2020 to try and promote cybersecurity in Europe. And with them, we've identified and we've worked on European cyber startups. And as my colleague was saying, they have the pressure of hyper-regulation in Europe, because regulation has shows us two sides of the coin. It helps us do things adequately, but it's also an additional cost for companies, as Georgios was saying. So we do believe that there's European talent and good companies that can have a key role in cyber technology in the future. And right now, the players in the market are either US or Israel, with the problem that they have in Israel. For example, in Santander, we are working, and you can see it in the press, we've created an investment fund with 300 million euros with other European players. And this is the biggest investment fund for cyber. And this is something that will be formally announced in September. Forscom Capital Europe, to be able to invest and to have European players, that is the best technology companies, that with the help of these investment funds, they're able to escalate, be bigger, and with the help of European multinationals, because there's many in many sectors, and our footprint is present in many countries, we're able to use this technology instead of US or Israeli technologies. That's the idea, because the talent is here. But it is true that nowadays there's no significant players in the market, and when there's one to grow, they end up leaving to the US or purchased by a US company. We have the first Spaniard that left, and that now, of course, lives in Silicon Valley, because that's the only way of growing. That's the reality nowadays.
Take a look at the gaps where let me go back a bit to the market capitalization. When you see these gaps, you can imagine how challenging and how difficult it seems to make a project of Europe leading in all technologies, and it is unlikely. However, what I believe the strength of Europe can be is within different niche sectors of its technology. So while we may not be able to lead in the entire of artificial intelligence industry, we may, for example, be able to lead in the health AI industry. So I think what is very important is to recognize what our niches are. I don't think we are very much aware of what our strength niches are in its technology industry, and help to cultivate them. Now, another area where we are strong, and sometimes maybe this is missing when we are seeing this picture, is that European tech companies are usually stronger when it comes to the B2B sector. So they sell from a business to business, they sell business solutions rather than consumer-facing application. And essentially, ASML is our biggest champion, is also a B2B provider. It doesn't sell to consumers like us. So that is another sector. And then the third point that I want to make is, I think, there is an interesting distinction that we must make when we're thinking about digital technologies in Europe between innovation and diffusion. So innovation is when we're making new technologies ourselves. We're being innovative, we're pushing the boundaries. Diffusion is when we're taking technologies, even when they're made elsewhere, even if they're made in Europe, and we make sure they're applied in across all traditional industries. And we tend to focus on innovation and leading innovation in Europe, and it's very important, don't get me wrong, but I think it's also very important to focus on diffusion. And even if we're not able to lead in innovating, we must be able to lead in diffusing and making sure that every traditional sector is implementing these technologies. And I want to give a final example before I close. You spoke about the automotive industry and how Europe is very strong, but that is also a landscape that is changing right now, because we see that cars are going from being mechanical to being smart, connected, automated, and what will play a major factor in the car market of the future will be, of course, the software components and the AI components that will make it more attractive to the customers. So that is one example why I think it's very important to also diffuse the technologies in the traditional industries.
No, muchas gracias.
Thank you. If I may now, I'm going to give the floor to Nacho Torreblanca. And then after, please raise your hands because we have 25 minutes for the Q&A session. I'm sorry, we need the microphone. Yeah, I know you. Yes, you can go to the table.
Sí, muchas gracias. Mi pregunta era para ti, Idoia.
Thank you. My question is for Idoia. When talking about attribution and responsibility, someone from EUROPA said that if the probability of entering a bank and going out of 1 million euros, if it was the probability was 0.0003, a lot of people would go into a bank and take these 1 million euros. So I guess these cases have the consequences in cybersecurity, but the strategies of cybersecurity are defensive, reactive, but very, very few are proactive. How can we improve the attribution and the prosecution of these crimes, not only using investment to cut down these kind of crimes? And with that, I wanted to talk about the responsibility issue of the security suppliers. I guess that there is no sector that provides vulnerable devices. Even in the recent case of CrowdStrike, it was a CrowdStrike. It wasn't a computing attacks. If you have an airport and your planes cannot fly because of a security issue, no one is going to ask for in some kind of compensation. I guess maybe this is not fiscalized. In your contract with the supplier, there is no clause for that, for providing those so weak products, for example. In a sector where we say we need to have 500,000 jobs in cybersecurity, maybe we should better improve our products instead of having to defend oneself of something we cannot stop. I start with the second question. Yes, you are right. The CrowdStrike is just like a new generation antivirus. It is a small company, and now it is a best player. This company is in the air companies, hospitals. And as the world is digital, everything is software. Cloud is software. The AI is software. So we have these biases because the software is done by a human being. So a possible mistake in the software can stop a whole company. There was a failure, and there were a lack of combination. The CrowdStrike with Windows is everybody has Windows. All the companies have Windows, and we have Windows. So in 24 hours, there were companies that had to stop. There was a chaos in the airports and companies, etc. So we started to receive questions from the regulator. As I have mentioned before, we started using common software suppliers. These as SaaS services. There are cloud services, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and we also have other softwares that are using this cloud platform that are in the market, and we are in their hands. We are beginning to see clauses in the contract, so you can demand for a cyber incident. There are clauses in the contract. We have also insurances to cover these issues. With a cyber insurance, you can ask for money for a compensation. It wasn't the case before, but now we are seeing these cases, and this is still not very common, but the banking sector is going to demand these clauses for an absence of software, for example, a failure or an absence of a cloud, because this represents a huge loss, because all our transactions are made through internet. And the first question, it is very interesting. It is very difficult to catch the cyber criminals. I strongly believe, and I think I have put into jail the only Spanish cyber criminal. 4 years of a trial. It's very long. And we work a lot with Europol, and we firmly believe that we have to punish those cyber criminals. Otherwise, you are just turning your back on them. And we are, before we had people with guns into a bank to rob the bank. But now, in a digital world, the risk can be carried out by a young guy on the other side of the world, and it's very difficult to catch that guy because we have we belong to a regulator of a country, of the EU, but they can attack me from another continent and across 7 countries of the world, for example. So therefore, we collaborate among companies. If there has been an attack to a company in the public sector, we work together because I think it is important. The case of Mexico, it wasn't a bank. It was Santander. It was another bank. But we held them because it was the same group that attacked the major bank of Chile. So in the investigation, we were aware that it could be me tomorrow. So we have to pursue these cases. Justice is very slow. But when talking about cyber insurance and we want to claim a compensation, you have to put a complaint forward. Otherwise, you haven't acknowledged the fact that you have been attacked. If you don't do that formally, the cyber insurance won't give you a compensation. And sometimes if you complain, you are showing a certain degree of weakness, yes, but we have to put forward a complaint. And I think that today, that's why we are denouncing many cases. So that's what I can say. It's very difficult.
Abrimos para más preguntas.
Thank you very much.
Los procedimientos esos de inteligencia artificial que le pide.
When you ask the AI to ask for a report on any kind of issue, you have it, your report. The other day, one of my collaborators asked the chat GPT-2 draft a resolution draft of the UN again the invasion of Gallia by Julius Caesar. And it was drafted, it was written, and saying to Julius Caesar that he had to have this chart of the UN, etc. So it's very funny, but we have to beware with this AI because it is acting out time and space, and it is a mix of all the information existing in the internet. Julius Caesar and they show him a project of the resolution against, and so it has its limitation, of course. But it's fun. It's an anecdote. You're right. It is a system where you feed him with context and knowledge. But if you feed ChatGPT with fake news, it is also a part of this information. There is a fraud GDP. So there are tools to fraud, to have fake identities, and with 2 minutes of voice recording, and with all the tools we have available on internet, we can have this fake identity, and we can also have we can have this identity theft in many cases. And so, yes, it is very difficult to distinguish this fake news, and the cyber crime is forcing all the companies to spend money to fight against these new threats. But we have to talk also about the European lagging back. We have been the ones that have been promoting those sectors, automotive. This new innovation wave is there. We are not very present. It was a slide of Professor Verdi, where we see that in matters of innovation, Europe is lagging behind. I don't know how we can measure that, maybe through patents, but we clearly see this fact. You also mentioned the evolution of the industrialization after the tax to reduce inflation. There is an investment that is rocketing for industrial investment, and I've seen that, and it's rocketing. The regulations or fiscal incitations are very important. And I'm not sure if NVIDIA was created because there was some kind of fiscal incentive. I'm not sure. I don't think that is the case. But this capacity rocketed in the U.S., and in China, I think it is quite the same.
For three very interesting presentations. I've worked all my career in the ICT technical domain at the European level. And I agree that we can be very proud of the fact that the EU is developing regulation to protect the European citizens. But I don't think we can leave this room with the impression that the EU is only doing that. There is a part of the EU budget, as I think many of you must know, that is dedicated to funding research and development and innovation. All EU universities, many EU companies cooperate with co-funding from the EU. This program is managed by the European Commission. So, and the EC, the EU, have been doing that for decades. I worked in the 90s on the ESPRIT program that some of you may know. That was to develop, to advance the frontier of IT technology in Europe. So, two questions related. Is there really a role for public actors to help develop the leadership of European companies in this domain? I think we are we are close to leadership in scientific development, but here we are talking more about economic development. And second, so if European institutions have been working on this for, let's say, 30 or more years, what more or what else can they do if they have a role to play in this domain? Thank you.
Sí, gracias por las posiciones.
Thank you for the presentations. Question, the fact of Europe lagging behind, if we compare it with the US, is a cultural issue, in my opinion, because in Europe, the role of the entrepreneur has been sometimes demonized. We have seen the entrepreneur as a social parasite, or that is greedy and taking off the domestic wealth. But also we have on the other side an education system where all the students that leave a university we have more civil servant trainings. A high percentage of the young students getting out of the university, their objective is to be a civil servant. A civil servant is the one that turns his back to risk, is the one that gets into an institution, an organization, where they are going to get merits, to be promoted, and this generates, say, a certain degree of security, but also it is the opposite of the entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is not afraid of risk. This is the American. That's why Silicon Valley has success, and in Spain, the vocations of those ending the university, I don't know what is the training for one who's going to be working at a local authority in a municipality, but I see these kind of profiles, and I guess that is a cultural issue. And in a country where more than 3.5 million of people are civil servants with 21 million of active citizens, 20 out of 100 people that work in companies, we have 20 that are civil servants. I don't know if it is the case in other EU member states. But without talking about the 5 layers of administrations, the city council, the regional council, but this is packed with civil servants. Can we compete in this kind of scenario? We're going to take another question, and then we will proceed with the answers. Good morning. First of all, thank you to the speakers and the choice of the topic. I have a remark and a question. We can also have the example of the bike in the citizens that have been lured and the ones who will be lured. It is very easy to cheat on the citizens and frauding the logo of a bank, having online romanticism, talking about whatever. We can have phishing. We have many targets in among certain groups of population wanting to get money. And my question is the following. You have been talking about the macro-analysis. You also have got down to more micro-analysis related to banking. But I care about citizens more because I see that cybercrime is well ahead. The answers we have as citizens of pressure groups, for example, I know that you might not have an answer, but I would like to listen to your reflection and your thoughts about that, because at individual level, all what you're saying has no sense, because sometimes we are ashamed when we are being cheated. But also, we don't really believe in a solution that for these citizens that has been cheated. There can be frauds through the bank or letters asking for money. And how can we help citizens? These speedily response, how can they get to citizens? And also I wanted to talk about what the High Representative has said about Julius Caesar. I know how my students write. So I see my students just writing as a pro. And I say, well, what happened? The ChatGPT. So that's for sure. The university also is helping teachers to differentiate that, but it's not that easy. Students can be acting very fast with this kind of tools. So I'm really interested in that. What are you doing for us, for the citizens? How do you see that? I could talk about elderly people that are facing difficulties as well. We have this digital gap. How can we help those people to avoid this kind of fakes, and so we can also, I would like not only to have an answer or solutions, but I would like to know what are your thoughts about that. Thank you. It is a very interesting session. We have not very much time, but when talking about young people, I cannot say anything. There are many young people in the room, and I'm sure they have more ambitions and more wanting for a risk. I would like to say something about the connection with the private sector.
We have really good universities. We have really good companies that are still at the forefront of these sectors. Indeed, they are champions because we were there, industrially speaking. Indeed, as George just mentioned, there are big techs getting into every and each of these sectors. Also, Amazon is getting into health. So but what I don't see is the connection of the university with companies actually to make companies grow. It's something like no, this is not the role of the university to help the private sector to develop. Ask that to the California universities. They are very good, and they have clear that part of the role is not just share knowledge and the engineers and all expertise with the companies, but also be part of a joint project. And that's a thing that at least I don't see in Europe happening enough.
Sí, estoy de acuerdo. Yo sobre lo que ha comentado.
I fully agree with what has been said. What about the young people? Well, we have identified that in Spain there are a lot of young entrepreneurs. We work with startups within CIBE that organizes talks in León, and when talking about startups, there are a lot of young people wanting to be entrepreneurs. Of course, before it wasn't the case, but now I see a lot of young people wanting to be entrepreneurs and to promote entrepreneurship in cybersecurity. And about what you have mentioned, there are two questions there. The use of ChatGPT is a fact. I have two sons. The older one used ChatGPT to correct its works and his papers. The use of this tool is a fact, but we have to change our way of training and educating. We have to use it as a tool to improve the results, not only to cheat and to copy, but also we, as political leaders, entrepreneurs, as we play a major role. And I think that technology is there, but technology has to be safe, and the cyber security has to be everywhere. When I was small, we did not have a belt in the car, safety belt in the car. But now we wouldn't understand a car without safety belt. When I was 10 years old, we were 5 or 6 or 7 in a car. There were no safety belts. We knew that there were risks, but now the youngest use the belt. We have a lot of training online in the banking sector, in a public side of our web. We have a lot of training, and we organize webinars. We have a lot of training online, and I like what you have said about the digital gap. We think that there is still a lot of digital gap among even young people, that they are facing. Still, there's a digital gap. If we do not solve that, it's going to be very complicated to carry on and to progress in Europe.
Right. Two things that I've noted down. I forgot where the questions came from, sorry. But the one thing is, I heard a really good point about research, and I want to reinforce that, because actually something we didn't mention is that in Europe, we are really good when it comes to high impact and high volume research, especially in AI. We were first in the world until 2019, and now we're second just below China. So we are doing some things correctly, like the knowledge is there. Probably the problem happens when we are about to turn that research into something marketable, to go from the university to the market. And so that is something definitely to think about. And again, if we do the comparison with the United States, there is arguably a better ecosystem. And when we're talking about the technology ecosystem, we're not talking about the companies, we're talking about all actors. So it's the companies, but it's also the universities that are feeding talent into the companies, and it's the public authorities that are supporting both. So that is one. And the second one is skills, of course, that I heard a couple of times, and education, that I think are vital. We've talked about it so many times, but they're so important. And it isn't, I want to stress this, it isn't only about advanced skills. It isn't about only people who are able to build the next ChatGPT. It's also about everyone in Europe gaining basic digital skills. Now, Idoia will know it much better, but one of the most popular methods of cyber attack is not only attacking the vulnerabilities, but it's also phishing emails. Yeah. Social engineering. You get an email, it is through people. You get an email that you think comes from your bank, from your telecommunications provider. It looks really good. You open the link, bam, the vulnerability is there. So in order to be able to fortify our organizations, our countries, we all need to have a minimum level of digital skills. Now, I'm curious how the education system works in Spain. I can say that in Greece I had very little digital education, digital skills. But something that is very interesting that I was reading about it just this week was that in South Korea, they're introducing AI-based textbooks from as young as 8 years old, and they're piloting the program to be based on language and math for the first couple of years, and then they will integrate every course. And what an AI textbook means is that every student gets a personalized exercise based on their level, and they don't have to have a standardized textbook printed for everyone. They can have the learning ability based to themselves. And this is not only good for the learning, but it's also good to get to know better the new technology. So I'm curious, how would that sound to a European government or a European education system, and how would that integrate? So.
11:27, hemos cumplido. Muchas gracias a todos.
11:27. Just an announcement. At 11:30, the High Representative has to be with the press. So I will ask you, the cameras are outside. Please keep quiet, and because there are TVs there. Thank you very much for your cooperation. At the end, we will give you a copy of the High Representative books. Europe among two wars. And we will also have a cocktail for all of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for keeping silent. Thank you. Thank you.
Podéis salir por la puerta lateral.